Welcome to today's lecture. I'll be taking you through project financing and sustainability, that is BED4202. This is our session 2. This is our session 2. And my name is John Kenywa. I'm from the Department of Social and Development Studies, the School of Social Sciences. So in today's lesson, we'll be looking at basically the introductions, the basic introduction into project financing and sustainability. And in this case, we'll be defining important terms that will be coming up in the course of this unit. And then we'll also be looking at to introduce you into what the project financing is all about. We'll talk about the characteristics of project financing. And then we will talk about the parties that are normally involved, or the stakeholders that you normally expect to find involved within the project financing arrangements. And then you also look at some of the benefits and some of the limitations of project financing. So to begin with, we want to define what project financing is. Project financing, as you'd say, is the use of non-recourse. Notice the word non-recourse, or limited recourse financing to implement or to fund a project. That's the definition that's normally given by the World Bank. And the World Bank are big players, or they're major funders of financiers of project financing. And so in this case, we are saying that is the use of non-recourse or limited recourse financing. Now, the financing of a project is said to be non-recourse when lenders are repaid only from the cash flow generated from the project, or in the event of complete failure, project failure, that the project has not been implemented or has failed completely, the money is recovered from the value of the project's assets. Now, in this case, lenders may also have limited recourse to the assets of the parent company sponsoring a project. So it's important when we talk about non-recourse, is that we are saying if you implement a project, or the project that you're implementing is funded through project financing, it means that those that have given you the finances for your project can only recover that money. If they have given you loan to fund your project, is that they can only recover the money that they have given you from the cash inflow or the profit that your project is going to be able to generate. So they give you that credit on the basis that your project will be able to raise enough amount of cash inflow, or you're able to raise enough money from the project itself for it to be able to pay back the credit. So say, for example, if you finance a project and say in this case, it's you want to construct a road, like in the case of the road network that we hear is going to be constructed from Nairobi to Kenyatta International Airport, that is going to be funded through project financing. Now, what they are saying is that when that road is going to be constructed, is that those that are going to be using that road are going to be paying for that road. Now, the income that's going to be generated from using that road, because everybody is going to use it, is going to have to pay what you refer to as, mostly we call them toll, is going to pay. That money is then what is going to be used to pay back the credit. So in that case, then you can say that you are given this credit on the basis of the potential of your project to be able to raise enough money or to generate enough revenue or enough profit that can be used to pay back that credit. Now, like here we said, when in the event that your project is not successful, or in the event that the project collapses, or it's no longer functional, or it's not in operation anymore, non-recourse means that those who have given you the credit can only come so far. They can only come for the assets that belong to the project itself, and not anything else. So you as an individual, if you are the one who is a project owner, and you had this project implemented using project financing, is that those who had given you credit can only come for the assets that you bought that belong to the project itself, and nothing else that belongs to you as an individual. Because from the very beginning, when you're going for this credit financing, is that you are not asked for collateral, like what you'd normally be asked if you're going to get a conventional loan from a bank. They will normally ask you for a collateral, they will ask you for security, they will ask you for guarantors. In this case, there's nothing like that they're going to ask for. They only look at your financial projections, the potential of your project to raise enough money. What are your projections? How much do you project to make in the future? And then based on what your projections are, then they're going to give you the money that you have asked for. That is, if the project can be able to earn as much. And so in that case, like we said, that then you as a person are protected. If the project fails, they can only come for what belongs to the project only, and nothing else. Now that's what we refer to as project financing. And now I want us to look at what are some of the characteristics of project financing. And one of them is that it is capital intensive. In this case, we mean project financing tend to be large scale projects that require a great deal of debt and equity capital from hundreds of millions to billions of dollars. And this one normally include things to do with the infrastructure projects that normally fill this category. They are capital intensive. So in this case, then you don't expect maybe as a project that costs maybe 1 million. Probably someone wants to go and set up a shop in a certain area. And because you've learned about the principles of project financing, then you say that then I'm going to set up my project using project financing. That is not going to be the case. If the project is doesn't require as much money, you might not find anybody that might be willing to give you credit on the basis of what you expect to earn from that project. But because in most banks, because for a project that does not require a lot of money, if you go to a bank, what they of course require you to provide is a collateral. So for small project, they will not necessarily be able to earn or be able to convince anybody to be able to finance it using project financing. Then the other characteristics is that it is highly leveraged, and in this case is that you find the financing of most of this project. The reason why they are financed using project financing is because they are very, very expensive. And so in most cases, you'd find that most of these projects are usually 65% to 85% are purely financed using credit. It's not out of the pocket money. Even if it's a project that's been implemented by another organization, like say for example, if you have, like in the case of Kenya, where we have the power generation company, Kengen, in one of the sites, where they're doing geothermal. And some of the turbines that they have there, it's not that they have been bought by the government per se, but have been purely financed using from the government of Japan, and they have been financed using what we call the project financing arrangement in that case. And so in that situation, you'd find that probably the government has committed itself or has provided some equity or some capital to acquire some of those turbines. But then the largest share or the largest amount that have been contributed towards that specific assets has been financed maybe by the government of Japan. So we are saying it's high leveraged. You have more than 50% of the financing for those assets or those projects are purely through what you call credit. Then the other characteristics is that they are normally long-term. You'll find that most of these projects, they range between 15, 20, 40, even 50, even some of them can even go for 100 years. They are expected to be running for all that period of time. So they are long-term projects in most cases. Then the other characteristics is that project financing or raising funds for project through what you call project financing is very expensive. It's a very costly exercise. And the reason is because, like we also come to see another characteristics, is that we have many people that are involved. Two, is that there are a number of other things that need to be carried out. Because for you to be able to come up with books that can be able to convince any donor or any funder to accept to give you money and expect to receive back their money based on how much your project is going to earn, is not an easy task for anybody. And so in most cases you'd find that most of these projects, they normally engage experts, people who are experts in doing in preparing books for these kind of arrangements, financing arrangements, and in that case, of course, you're also going to have different experts at different sections. Maybe if it's in a case of a road construction that you want to do using project financing, then you're going to have engineers, and not just engineers, but people who have had experience. They know how, not only how roads construction and costs go about, but also things to do with how rolling out a possible toll correction facility would normally work within specific environment. And we also have to have experts, maybe things to do with looking at risk analysis, being able to look, you also have to have experts in finance. People would be able to project into the future and say how much cash flow they expect from your project. People would also be able to look at different scenarios. And so it's a very expensive. And you also have to have legal experts being involved. You also have to have banks being involved. And all of them, they come at a cost. And so it's normally very expensive. And that's why we are saying that in most cases you find that project would have to be quite, it would have to be a project that requires a lot of money for you to be able to offset some of these costs, because the costs are way too high. Then the other characteristic of project financing is that it is an independent entity with a finite life. And in this case is that in contemporary project financing, they frequently rely on a newly established legal entity known as a project company, which has the sole purpose of executing the project and which has a finite life. So it cannot outlive its original purpose. And in this case, what we are saying is that some of the projects that are implemented, you find that these projects that are housed within another company, like the example that we gave for Kengen. But take, for example, if it's a private institution, or in this case, probably it's even the construction of a road, like the one that we have referred to. So for the construction of a road that's going to be constructed by maybe a company, is that you have that construction of road the company that is going to construct that road, they have many more other projects that they are carrying out there. And road is just one of the projects that they are going to be implementing. And so we are saying that project itself has a finite life. It has a beginning. When is the project going to be implemented? From now up to when? So it has a life in itself, and it is finite. It has a beginning and it has an end. And so when you're coming to plan for project financing, is that you have to lay out how then that the credit or the loan that you have been able to, or that you're going to acquire to finance that project, how it's going to be offset, or how it's going to be cleared or paid within the time when the project will be operating. And in the case of assets, in the case of where you have been able to acquire an asset through project financing, then it will be important for you to be able to demonstrate how that specific asset is going to generate enough revenue to be able to offset the credit within the time when the project, when that facility is still active. Because, like we said, like you come to discover that all assets depreciate with the time. They depreciate until up to the point where they become obsolete. And you have to demonstrate that before it becomes obsolete, it's going to have cleared out the loan that you had acquired from the financiers. Then the other characteristics is that project financing is an non-recourse or limited recourse financing. And here is the company, that is the borrower. and here, this one we have discussed, saying that in most cases that this one, it's only limited, that you acquire the credit, but this credit is only paid based on what the project is able to generate, and the debtors, or those have given you, or that have given credit to the project, can, if in the event that the project is not able to take off, or in the event that the project fails, they can only be able to get back their money through the assets, or selling the assets that belong to the company only, or rather that belongs to the project only and nothing else in that case. The other characteristic of a project financing is that it's controlled. It has what you call controlled dividend policy. And in this case, to support the borrower, to support a borrower without a credit history, is a highly leveraged project. In a highly leveraged project with significant debt services, with significant debt service obligations, lenders demand receiving cash flows from the project as they are generated. And what we're saying here, the controlled dividend credit policy, dividend policy, is that once the project generates income or generates profits, the debtors, or those that have given you the credit, demands or require you to first of all pay off the credit. So there is no question of you first of all taking that money and start dishing out to other investors in the project. The priority is given to paying the credit for all the money that's going to be earned for all the period that the credit will still be in existence. Is that you earn the money. There is what is going to be used for the working capital, or to make sure that the project is still earning, things to do with taking with the operational costs, the recurrent costs. That one you're going to take care of. But anything on top, is the priority is going to be, first of all, to pay back the credit before starting giving additional dividends to other investors or to you as the owner. Then the other characteristic is that we have many participants, and like we said, is that in this case you have many parties that are going to be involved in project financing. And here you're going to have, in some cases, in the event that you're going to have maybe a government-to-government sort of project financing arrangement, then you're going to have participants from both governments. Then you're going to have the legal representatives from all the government. Then you're going to have the individuals who are going to be involved in the project implementation itself in terms of the company, because there's no project that's ever implemented by the government. You never say that if a specific project is being implemented by the government, and the government itself is going to implement it. Of course, they're going to implement it either through a company or through the ministry, and even if it's a ministry, it's still going to have to hire someone from the outside to go and implement that project. And so those individuals are going to be involved. Those companies are going to be involved. Then you are also going to have legal experts being involved. You're also going to have the banks, the financing, because this money, wherever it's going to come from, you still have to go through the banks before it gets to maybe the contractors or whoever else is going to be paid to carry out the project. So the banks are also going to be involved, and because it is a huge amount of money, you might even have not only one bank being involved, but several banks to take care of that you don't then channel in too much money through one bank. Because what would happen if the bank itself collapses? So you're going to have several banks being involved. Then you're also going to have participants or the beneficiaries, maybe the customers also being involved. You're also going to have other people that might be affected by the project itself also being involved. You would also have people that are involved with the exports and imports. Because you also find that in most of these projects, this massive project financing project, is that sometimes some of the assets that are going to be used, they are normally imported, and they are expensive assets that are it's a huge amount of money that is normally involved. So you're going to have some of those individuals that are involved in when it comes to exports, or rather the imports also being involved, essentially things to do with the transport, the logistics. So we're going to have several number of participants that are going to be involved in that case. Like we said, things to do with analysts, experts, in that legal, in that specific profession, and all those others. Then the other characteristics of project financing is what we call allocated risk. And in this case, is because there are many risks that are going to be present within this kind of arrangement, project financing arrangement. And often the crucial element here is required is to make project go forward. Is that you make sure that project is able to go forward, and that we have what we call the proper allocation of risk. That given all these individuals that are going to be involved, or all these different parties that are going to be involved in your project, you make sure that the project, that the risks that are also present or that you anticipate to be there within the project are allocated to the rightful participants or the rightful parties that can be that are best suited to handle that specific risk. Say for example, if you have things to do with risk, the risk of imports, there are some assets that need to be imported that are relevant to the project. And there is always a possibility that they could be delayed, they could be faulty, or they might come late, which of course is going to have some implication because of things to do with the foreign exchange rates are also going to change. So in that case, then you might want to have the individual who is going to be in charge of export and imports is one who is going, or that organization is one that's going to be responsible to take care of that specific risk, because they're more in control of that specific kind of risk. Or if it comes to a case of disbursement of funds, that money is supposed to be disbursed on time to whichever quarters that this money is supposed to go, then you might want to have that risk of delayed disbursement of money, which can also come with costs, increased costs, penalties that might come as a result. You might want to have that risk being given to the bank that is going to be a party or is going to be involved in that specific project financing arrangement, so that in the event that then they delay, then it's going to be their responsibility to take care of the penalties that might be involved in that sort of situation. Now, then we have talked about that one of the characteristics of this project financing is that we have many participants. So in this case, I want us to take us through what are some of the participants that you would expect to have within the project financing arrangement that you get yourself into. And like we said, there's that project financing arrangement is that you have them at different levels. You can have them at the government level, you can have at institutional level, you can have even at individual level, at private company level, at a corporate level. You can have them at whichever level. And so when we talk about the participants, it does not necessarily mean that all of them would apply across board in all forms of project financing, but you'd find that some of them would fit in some form of arrangement of project financing, and others may not be relevant in some of in other kind of arrangements of project financing. But begin with one most dominant participant that you'd find in a project financing is that you have the government. And this one may include the local government or even the national government, and here they will be in charge of things to do with approving a project, control of the state company that sponsors the project, responsibility for operating and giving environmental licenses, and if there are some standards that have been set by the government that are supposed to be met within a specific industry, then you're going to have some of the government agencies also being involved, make sure that you are able to meet those specific set standards in that specific environment where you'll be operating. And in some cases, there might also be major players, like in the event that the project financing itself is between government to government or even government to private institutions. Then the government there will also be involved in quite a big way. So their level of involvement depends on what kind of project are we talking about, essentially. But in most cases, they will also be involved. Even if it's a private project, then when it comes to licensing, when it comes to approvals, the government will have to be involved at some point. Then the other participant is what we call the project sponsors or the owners. And the sponsors or the owners are generally the project owners with an equity stake in the project. It is possible for a single company or a consortium to sponsor a project. When we talk about project sponsors or owners, here we are referring to the people who have come up with the project. So if, say for example, if we are talking about a hospital that is trying to acquire a very expensive machine that's supposed to be used maybe for diagnosis or treatment for a specific ailment that currently is not available, but they want to acquire it, but they cannot be able to afford it because they don't have enough money, and so they want to acquire it using project financing, is that the hospital that comes with that proposal that says that we want to get this project, that we want to get this specific asset, then they are what we call the project sponsors or the project owners. That project belongs to them, and they have a stake in it. They are going to make some contribution towards making sure that the project is that the asset is acquired. So they have a stake in it. Then the other is what we call the project company. And the project company is a single purpose entity created solely for the purpose of executing the project. And here it's controlled by project sponsors, and it is the center of project through its contractual arrangement with operators, contractors, suppliers, and customers. And here what we're saying is that whereas you have the project owners, those who have proposed the project itself, that then they go ahead and set up an arrangement, what you call a company, an arrangement, because the project financing itself is an entity by itself, like we said. It's an entity and has a finite life, but it is housed within a company. So when the company proposes what they want to do, that they put together a team that then is going to be responsible for seeing that this project has been carried to term itself. And so that's what we refer to as the project company. The individuals that have been hired and given the responsibility of implementing what the sponsors or what the owners want to achieve. That's what we refer to as the project company. And they are also major participants in project financing. The other is the contractors, or those people that are going to be involved in actual carrying out of the project. The contractor is responsible for constructing the project to the technical specification outlined in the contract with the project company. So in the event that the agreement here in this case is maybe to construct, say like we said, probably it's construct a road, or maybe to put up power lines, or to put up a power generating station in a specific area. Then the contractor is the one who's going to be responsible for doing the actual technical work of setting up the project, or doing the actual work, if it's a case of construction, then constructing or setting up the project or the asset itself, and make sure that it's running as it's supposed to. Then we have what we call the operators. And operators are responsible for maintaining the quality of the project assets and operating the power plant or the pipeline. In the case the project is about power plant or is about the pipeline, at maximum efficiency. And it's mostly not uncommon for operators to also hold an equity or a stake in a project. These are the people that are involved in the running of the project on a day-to-day basis, because once that has been set up, then there's someone who's going to be responsible for making sure that the project is running and running efficiently, essentially. And what we're saying is that sometimes you might also find that even them, they have a stake, and it will be important for them to also have a stake, because if they do, then it behoves them and becomes their responsibility. It is in their best interest for the project to operate efficiently, because they're also going to make something out of it. So it is not uncommon, like we're saying, for them to own a stake, or it's even preferable for them to make sure that they have a stake into the project. That if in the event that does not perform properly, then they too would also take a hit on it. Then the other participant that we have is what we call the suppliers. And the suppliers, these one they provide the critical input to the project. Maybe in this case, maybe for a power plant, the supplier would be the fuel supplier, But the supplier does not necessarily have to supply a tangible commodity. It could be something totally different, but they will be involved in providing some of the services that might be needed for the purposes of running the project effectively and efficiently, essentially. Then we also have what you call the customer, and the customer here is the party who is willing to purchase the project outputs, whether the output be a product or it be a service. These are the people who are going to be benefiting, or they're going to be the consumers of what is going to be generated from the project itself. And in some cases, we have what we call the off-takers, and especially if a project, say for example, what we have, the project that we have in Turkana that was set up for the power plant, the windmill power plant that was set up by a German company, I think. And in this case, they were only willing to set up the company if the government would commit itself to make sure that the power that's going to be generated from there, they're going to buy it. They're going to buy all the power that's going to be generated from there. And so in that case, that's what we normally refer to as the off-takers, or people that have committed themselves that you get the product, manufacture the product, that we are willing to buy this product at a certain costs. And those, of course, would be also your customers in that regard. Then we also have what we call the commercial banks, and the banks here represent a primary source of funds for financing, for project financing. And here, in arranging these large loans, the banks often form syndicates to sell down the interests. And what we mean here, if they're dealing with huge loans, and we said that project financing is capital intensive, it requires a lot of money. So you'd find that in most cases, that the banks that are going to be involved is not just one. Not just one bank would be willing to participate alone because the risks are too high. If the project fails, it can also collapse the bank itself or affect its liquidity or capital base itself. And so in most cases, you'd find banks forming what we call the syndicates, and these agreeing to how much they will be willing to finance the project, essentially. Then we also have the other participants are what we call the capital markets, and that is in the event that you decide to raise your funds or the finances through what we call the equity share, or selling things to do with bonds or treasury bonds, essentially. Then you might want to have the capital markets also being involved in allowing you to do just that. Then the other participant that we have is what we call the direct equity investment funds, and these are private infrastructure funds, which represent another source of equity capital for project financing. Then the other participant, there are many of them. Of course, you'll not be able to exhaust all of them, but maybe to look at these few more others, that we have what we call the multilateral agencies. And these are the kind of the World Bank, the International Finance Corporation, and the regional development banks that are often act as leaders or co-financiers to important infrastructure projects in developing countries. You'd find, like in the case of Africa, you have the African Development Bank that have in the past been involved, that they have provided financing in big ways. To finance projects, development project, infrastructure project, like when they talk about constructing a road from Egypt going down to South Africa. PRA is going to be financed by African Development Bank, and then you have several banks, several projects that have been financed using the World Bank, and I know you know several of them that have been financed through this arrangement in Kenya, like the one that is from Murang'a is supposed to bring water to Nairobi from Murang'a, essentially, and we have most of them that are also involved. Then we also have what we call the export credit agency, and this is because infrastructure projects in developing countries in this part of the world also so often require imported equipment from developed countries. The export credit agencies, or ECAs, are routinely approached by contractors to support some of these projects when they're going to import some of these sometimes very expensive assets that are supposed to be used in the project. Then you might want to have involve them or to engage them, to assist you being able to import some of those assets. Then we have others. We have the legal specialists. We have the financial specialists. You might also want to have other experts in that specific industries also being involved, and many more others. We cannot be able to exhaust them for now, but that's just to name just but a few. Then the other thing that we look at is what we call the benefits. What are some of the advantages of using project financing to implement a project? And one of them is what we call the effective debt allocation. Here, project finance enables the sponsor to raise debt over and above the capacity of the parent. This borrowing can be viewed in an individual capacity and is not impacted by the credit reputation of its sponsors. And what you mean here is that when you're going for a conventional loan, maybe from a bank or from any other institution that might be willing to give you credit, is that for a conventional loan, they'll give it to you based on your worth. How much are you worth? How much can you be able to afford? You probably as an individual or even as an institution, how much can you be able to afford? And what they look at is that your ability, what they refer to as mostly your ability to pay. That if you give you this credit today, will you be able to pay it back based on your current cash flow? Based on your current cash flow, can you be able to pay that credit? But when it comes to project financing, what you're saying is that you are able to raise far much more money than what you as an individual or you as a company or institution or even as a government can be able to afford in terms of credit. Because we said that you're given this credit on the ability of the project itself to raise enough revenue to offset the credit. So as long as the project is able to raise enough funds, as long as the project is able to make enough profit and pay back the credit, then you can be able to acquire as much credit as the project itself can be able to pay back. So if your worth as a company or even as an individual is maybe only 10 billion, but the project requires maybe 100 billion, and the project proves worth that it can actually be able to pay back the credit, then they are still going to be able to give you 100 billion, 100 billion in that case. And you'd find, like in case of Kenya, we have the credit rating bureau, which means that if you take loan maybe from a bank and you don't pay it back in time, then you're supposed to be registered with the credit rating bureau and given maybe a bad rating, meaning that in the future banks should be very careful when giving you credit because you don't pay. But what you're saying in this case is that even if you have a bad reputation, you as a person or even as a company, that you have not been able to honor your past commitments as an individual, that this is not going to affect, this is not going to come into play when it comes to project financing. This is not going to come into play. It's not going to be considered. What's only going to be considered here is the ability of the project to pay back the credit. So this one raises the bar for you to be able to acquire financing that you would not have been able to acquire if the financing was used in different other different arrangements. Then you have what you call the risk management. In this case, the shareholders of the parent company are immune against the fluctuations in the fate of the project. The liability is limited to the amount of equity contributed by the sponsors, and additionally, the risk is also reduced upon involvement of multiple entities. And what we mean here is that when you get into a project financing arrangement for a project, what you have done is that one, the company that's sponsoring, or the sponsors or the owners of the project, is that themselves they are insulated, they are protected against the possible failures or possible fluctuations within the environment where the project is going to be implemented. So that if the inflows that had been projected do not come out as had been anticipated, that you as a sponsor, the creditors or those that have given you credit cannot come after you they can only come after the project itself, because it's the project that has refused to pay back their money, not you as a person. And so it provides that form of insulation or security for the sponsors of the project. But then again, the very fact that you're going to have many individuals involved or many participants involved in the project who are also going to be playing a major role within this specific arrangement, is that you are able to distribute and to allocate the risk on the people that are best suited to handle that risk. And so in that case, it helps you to address the problem of managing the risk that the project is exposed to. Then the next benefit, the other benefit of project financing is what we call the economies of scale. And this case is that because it's flooded or you have floated, or it's floated by more than one parent, it's very likely to demonstrate economies of scale within a project financing arrangement. Because in this case, we have two contemporary organizations who will only agree to come together for a common goal when they see a significant benefit flowing from the association. And what you mean here is that you are going to have, because you have arrangement of different participants that are going to come into the play within the project financing arrangement. In this case, is that you have everybody is going to play their best. They are going to put their best foot forward. So you have all these many participants, and all these participants everybody putting their best foot forward for the purpose and for the benefit and for the success of the project. What that means is that you have what you define in that case the economies of scale. You'll be able to achieve more because you're many of you, and everybody is an expert in the area that they are handling. So you'll be able to achieve more and reduce possible cost overruns that you might have experienced if you don't have this, and even generate even more revenues from this kind of arrangement, essentially. And then maybe the benefit that probably we have not included here, but also comes in very handy. It is mostly when it comes to developing countries, when you have several infrastructure projects that need to be implemented, but maybe the government or the budget or the revenues that are generated within a country are not sufficient to be able to finance some of those infrastructure, very expensive projects. So project financing itself comes in very handy, because then it provides an avenue through which governments in developing countries can be able to leverage on to be able to conduct or to implement such kind of projects, infrastructure projects, and commit itself to pay back the credit using those projects themselves to offset to pay back the credit. And as a result, of course, what you find is that you find these countries are able to develop, despite the fact that they're not able to raise enough revenues from their own tax corrections. So project financing itself as an option comes in very handy for the developing countries or in the developing countries. But nonetheless, we do have several limitations for project financing. But nonetheless, we do have several limitations for project financing. And one of them is the issue of complexity. In this case, it is based upon several contracts between multiple parties, each of them involving complex negotiations. It may be difficult to maintain a record of the flow of funds among the parties involved if the proper discretion is not exercised. And what you're saying here is that in as much as it has its benefit, the very fact that someone will be willing to commit to give you money, and they are willing to say that they are okay to get back their credit based on the potential of the project to be able to generate income in the future, is not an easy undertaking. It's not something that anybody would be easily be willing to commit themselves to. And so to be able to bring these individuals together and for them to be able to agree to that sort of arrangement, it's usually a very complex situation. One things to do with the legal, because remember you said it's long term. So they are committing themselves to receive this money for a period of 20 years. So you're going to have complex discussions about not only the current legal framework, but even at what is going to come into the future. So that in the event say like maybe here in Kenya, where we have the change of government every 5 years, how do those that are going to agree to finance the project, and maybe it's a government-led project, like in the case of the SGR, or in the case of the Thika Superhighway, how do those that are going to fund those specific projects, how are they going to be assured that regardless of whatever kind of government comes into place, that their money is still going to be paid and the project will still be running as effectively and efficiently and based on the agreement that they get into today? And so, and that one then involves some level of legal expertise to be able to deal with some of those things. And even when it comes to projections, because there are things to do with the inflations, there are things to do with changing foreign, changing the fiscal policy, there are things to do with weakening currency. How are you going to deal with all those when it comes to paying back your credit? And so it's a little bit, it's not a little bit, it's very complex. But it's doable. Of course, it has been done, and will always be done, even in the future. Then the other limitation is issues to do with compliance and documentation. Now, at all stops, setting up a special purpose vehicle. This is the project financing, which is here we refer to as SPV. This is special project vehicles. These special purpose vehicles faces the resistance. Banks and financial institutions perform extreme due diligence and checks before extending even a penny of credit. This is mainly for the reason that a special purpose vehicle holds separate legal status. And we are saying the reason why they would have to perform extreme due diligence before they give you a penny is because if the project fails, they cannot come after you. They only come after the project. So they have to be careful, extremely careful. And so for them to be able to agree to give you the credit, going through this compliance and documentation, we are saying you're going to face a number of challenges. And in most cases, the most obvious answer from most of those institutions, those that are committing to fund you, the most common answer when you first approach them is usually a no. It's normally a no. The first answer is always a no. And so it now behoves you and then the institution to prove to them that actually the project itself can be funded and can indeed be able to pay back the credit. Then lastly, the other limitation that you have or that you face at a project financing is what you call constant expert assistance. And this is because project financing involves complex transactions and multiple parties. And therefore, availing the services of professionals and experts is inevitable. And therefore, setting up a dynamic model for availing credit and conducting businesses involves huge costs. In this case, what we're saying is that in the whole for the whole time that the project will be implemented, is that you have to involve from the moment when it is initiated and proposed and negotiated and discussed and agreed, and even during the whole process of the implementation, that you're going to have a number of experts that are going to have to be involved in terms of monitoring the project, in terms of ensuring the project is implemented, the legal status, ensuring that everything is working as was agreed from the very onset, because it's huge amount of money that is at risk in this case, and these people would have to be involved. And therefore, if you are going to have them involved for all that period of time, these experts they do not come cheap. It also come at a huge cost for the project. And that brings us to the end of our lesson 2 today, and thank you for joining us.
These televised lectures supplement our robust online learning going on our MKU online platform. You can view more on our televised lectures via our online platform. We are in a digital era, and Mount Kenya University knows this. The following are the steps to follow so as to complete your online application. Download the application form from the website www.mku.ac.ke. Attach copies of your academic certificates and ID. Pay the application fees via M-Pesa pay bill number 270988. Your ID is the account number. 2,000 shillings is the charge for a postgraduate. You can also deposit in the bank accounts provided on the website. Then email all the above to apply@mku.ac.ke.